Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. If you're paying attention, you know that you only make money when you work. It might be great money, but it's dependent on you. The information on this podcast will help you solve that. We interview experts and provide analysis into financial freedom through commercial real estate. Why? To help physicians like you thrive. Let's dive in.
Well, welcome back to the show. Again, today is Trevor McGregor, who is a high-performance coach who focuses on real estate and helps a lot of physicians. The show today is sponsored by Fortress Capital, a private equity company that I founded to help physicians build passive income through commercial real estate. Being a physician is a high-stress job, and building passive income streams is key to not feeling trapped in that job. Let's build your financial fortress with Fortress Capital. All right, so we're back with Trevor. So we finished the last episode. We were talking about the tax advantages, and that's a big thing, and especially for docs or anybody who's a high W-2 earner, and especially if your spouse doesn't work. And this, again, not a tax advisor, but it's definitely worth talking to your tax advisor about the real estate professional status. And what that does is it allows your spouse to work in certain ways in real estate. And I hear a lot of people talk about this and say, oh, I want to be a real estate agent. Now, that is one way that you can go down that road, but management and a lot of other things that maybe just managing what you're already doing in real estate. And what it allows you to do is take a lot of the passive deductions that come from real estate and turn them into active deductions against W-2 income. So definitely one that's worth talking to your tax advisor about. So Trevor, how many docs do you know that are utilizing this?
Every single doc I know is utilizing this, Mike, because it's free money. It's like an absolute simple way for people to double down and take a program that is really, really, really powerful program to remember that it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep, right? And again, those tax incentives are available to anybody, but the higher the W-2 income earner, like an attorney, a doctor, a franchisee, a Fortune 500 executive that I coach, they're doubling down on this strategy because it's not that far-fetched. And once it's in place, it's relatively simple to keep going. So for anyone out there that wants more information on that, that information is available, but it's a great, great, great thing to be able to shift your perspective, in your mindset to be able to say, you know what? If I go out there and get a little bit of knowledge or a little bit of information, I too get to benefit and participate in such a program. And I think that's where I come in for a lot of doctors is lots of time we think that something is going to be too hard or it's going to take a long time, or what if I'm too old, or maybe I should just stay in my lane as a doc. Well, again, that's what average people think. That's your lower self thinking that, man, for me to change is like a tall order. When this is what your higher self needs to really embody, that it's the little things that you start to think and shift differently that can create a radical change over a long period of time. And that's why you'll hear Tony Robbins, who is my coach and my mentor. And so the listener can know that I not only got to work with and for Tony Robbins for half a decade, but I was one of his top coaches where he'd give me a lot of the real estate clients, a lot of doctors, a lot of professionals. And literally, I would take these people and start to work on their mindset. And then absolutely, once their mindset got to a different place, they'd start to take action differently. And Tony's famous quote is that success is 80% mindset, 20% mechanics are what you do. So when you think about tax savings, when you think about investing actively, when you think about investing passively, when you think you don't know enough, I'm telling you, if you're listening to this podcast, you're dangerous enough to just go out there and keep listening to this show, reading books like Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a lot of classics out there will really stack on why this is a must for a lot of people instead of a should. What do you think of that, Mike?
Yeah, I think that the mindset stuff, it's amazing how much we convince ourselves we can't do, or we think small. And there's where Trevor's great at taking you from, oh, I need to do that. I'm just going to buy some because we've had this conversation. I'm going to buy some duplexes and fourplexes, and maybe down the road, we'll see how it goes, looking at purchasing a $4 million strip mall. It's a big shift, and it's as much work to do big things as it is little things. And you can get so
It's actually easier, believe it or not, in my experience after I've done doing the the single family, the townhouses, the duplexes, the fourplexes, and all of that, right? Versus buying into a small multifamily property. Maybe it's 20 units or 50 units or 60 units. And then you've got some bigger ones, 100 unit, 200 unit. I mean, partners and I just took down a 300 unit opportunity where it's actually easier to finance. It's easier to run it like a business. It takes less time because you've got professional property managers involved. So all of this is really about shifting what I call the 4 S words, because Mike, there's 4 words that start with the letter S that you have to think about if you're going to make the break from just being in medicine to being in medicine and real estate. So if you're open to it, are we able to go through those 4 S words now for the list?
Absolutely. This is good.
You bet. This is my favorite stuff because as I give you these 4 S's, I really want the listener to think about it for themselves. And the very first one is what we call your state. And state really refers to state management. I mean, we've got this brain, right? We have roughly 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Some of them are conscious, some of them are subconscious, but really we think about the same things day in and day out. So how are you changing your state? That is, how are you changing your focus? How are you changing your physiology? How are you changing your language to show up differently today than maybe you did yesterday, right? Because I always say that where focus goes, energy flows. And unfortunately, most people in America are focused on why something won't work instead of focusing on why it will work. So that's why we always start with state management. You've got to focus on expansion and stepping into something that even if you're not 100% familiar with it, you're going to start to figure it out as you go. Does that make sense?
Yes, I love that one. It's where you're starting from catapult you forward or just leave you sitting there.
That's exactly it. So we move on from number 1 to number 2, and that is your story. And you know, Mike, that that's my favorite one because our story is our identity. It's who we believe we are. So I know there's people listening to this that are going, I'm a surgeon. I'm a podiatrist. I'm a radiologist. I'm a cardiologist. I'm an anesthesiologist, right? And that becomes their core identity, which is okay. But what if I told you you're also a husband, a wife, a mother, a father, a sibling, and potentially a real estate investor? Can you have multiple identities? Because Tony's got this great quote where he says that the strongest force in the human personality is the need to be consistent with how you define yourself. And I know that's a long quote, so I'll say it again. The strongest force in all of us is the need, N-E-E-D, the need to be consistent with how we define ourselves. So my invitation to people is define yourself as a doctor, right? As a wife, as a husband, as a brother, as a mother, whatever it is, but start to identify as an entrepreneur because at the end of the day, Mike, we're all entrepreneurial. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that we started to go work in factories and hospitals and stores. But prior to that, we were all entrepreneurs. We were butchers, bakers, farmers, candlestick makers, all of those things. So trust me, entrepreneurship could be part of your story if you choose it to be. Does that land with you?
Absolutely. I just love as you start to see yourself differently that opportunities come because now you see how they can be part of you rather than that stuff that other people do.
Oh, so good, brother. So well said. That gives me goosebumps. I love that. So if we've got your state, which is your focus, and your story, which is your identity, let's go to number 3, because number 3 is your standards. Yes, your standards. And I'm telling you that most people have a standard where they're not meeting their true potential, right? It could be in your health. It could be in your marriage. It could be in finding that second stream of income. But for people that identify that now's a great time to raise your standards, those are the people that go out there and make the world a better place and reap the benefits of doing so. So if you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix at night, instead of listening to some podcasts or going to some real estate meetups or reading some books, now would be a good time to raise your standard and say, you know what? I'm not just interested in real estate. I'm committed to learning it and to getting into it. Because once you shift your state, your story, and your standards, that leads to number 4. But before we get to that, what do you think of raising your standards? And I know you've done that. Your wife's done that. Even your girls have done that. But how would you speak to that for everyone listening?
Yeah, once you change what you expect out of yourself, because there was a time when I thought, oh, I'm a successful surgeon. That's good enough. But as I started, seeing that there's a timeline there of how long I want to work that hard, I got to be more than just a surgeon now, or else I'm going to be trapped here. But once I made that shift that I'm these other things too, and I'm going to be good at them, we can get back to that, but sometimes you're not good to begin with, but you can be good at them. Yeah, you start doing those things. You start reading, you start listening, and meeting people who will pull you to that next level.
Yeah. And Mike, I give you huge props for doing that yourself. I mean, reading the books, hiring coaches, going to real estate events from Atlanta to Salt Lake City. I mean, you're not just interested, you're committed. But in order to get to the level you've got to, you had to raise your standards. So huge props to you. And that takes us to the fourth one, the final one, which is your strategy. Yes, your strategy. That is, you've got to have something that's going to help you go from where you are to where you want to be. And some people might call it a recipe or a roadmap or a blueprint or a GPS. But I'm telling you, there's really not a lot new in real estate, and that somebody out there already has the strategy that will work for you. So if we recap all of these, and I'll throw it over to you for reflection, I'm inviting the doctors, the attorneys, the listeners, the business owners, the people that know that there's another level for them to really check in with their state. That's their focus. Check in with their story. That's their identity. And maybe it's time to step into a new identity. Check in with your standards, because I'm telling you this, the quality of your standards will dictate the quality of your life. And last but not least, it's time to find somebody that can plug you into a strategy to make that impact and that income through real estate that's available to you right now. Michael.
Yeah, the strategy, I've been amazed at how many people want to share their strategy, that they're out there, they love what they're doing, they love what it's done for their life. And as soon as you ask them about it, they'll spill their guts. It's not a secret. There's enough opportunity there for everybody. So there's no hiding things.
I love that. What comes up for me when you say that is, again, this isn't about competition. This is about collaboration. And trust me, there's more than enough properties in America to go around, right? So it's not like we're competing against everyone else out there. There's enough of the pie to go around, as long as, again, you're defiantly committed to your outcome. And just like you are, I am. We talked about someone on the last episode named Joe Fairless. Again, this is a guy that literally went from zero to $2.7 billion in assets under management. And you know what? By the time this podcast airs and by the time this next year rolls around, Joe and his partners are going to be closer to $3 billion. But that journey started with the first property. It started with the first investment. It started with finding the right people. But it really was all about Joe stepping into a new state with a new story, a new standard, and then figuring out that strategy to execute. But I'm telling you, you can really, really lean into a life of freedoms. And there's something we can talk about called the 5 freedoms by doing this exact thing, really checking in with those 4 S's. So before we get to the 5 freedoms, any other comments on these 4 delicious S's, Mike?
No, I love the S's. And yeah, let's get into the 5 freedoms, because this is good stuff. And this is kind of what inspires me when I feel stuck and kind of like, what is it that I'm really trying to do here? And the freedom is important, and it's more than what we often think. So I'm going to hand it back to Trevor for the 5 freedoms.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And again, you know what? After doing, again, 35,000 coaching sessions, working with doctors all over the world, I've really found that we're all after the same things. And it's something that I now refer to as the 5 freedoms. How many? 5. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all 5 of these, and I want the listener to really think if that's something that they would like to have in their lives, because I'll bet it is. And we started off with, you know what it is. Number 1, that is financial freedom, right? Let's get that money thing handled. Let's go out there and create more streams of income. Let's get to a place where Tony Robbins says that the best way to help the poor isn't to be one of them. And remember that financial freedom comes from investing in yourself and investing in a vehicle like real estate, where you're making a difference and adding value so much that money becomes the byproduct of the value you add. So for anyone that wants to move towards financial freedom, I'm telling you, it is available. And that is the first of the 5. Mike, what do you think?
That's an important one.
You bet. And you know that that leads to number 2. We've talked about this before because number 2 is time freedom. Once you've got a little bit of financial freedom, believe it or not, that opens up some time freedom for you to use some of that money to leverage other people helping you live your best life. Or maybe you want to get out there and work part-time, or maybe you want some freedom to hang out with your spouse or your kids or your grandkids or something as the years go by. So again, number 1 is financial freedom, but I know a lot of docs would love to step into more time freedom. True or true?
That one's absolutely true.
You bet. That takes us to number 3, Mike, called geographical freedom. And I love geographical freedom because it's really that when you get financially free or you're moving in that direction and you get more time, now you'll be able to go see all of this beautiful country called America. Or maybe you want to go up to Canada, where I'm from. Or maybe you want to go to Rome or Paris or go down under in Australia. But it's the financial freedom and the time freedom that opens up more geographical freedom for us to go out there and see this beautiful blue planet. What do you think of that one?
That one's awesome. And it's true that, one of my partners now every summer takes a 2-week vacation, and he's talking about doing a 3-week vacation because he now has the financial ability to do it and can build in the time so that he can take these big trips to Iceland and Europe and all these cool places.
Very cool. Very cool. So if we've got number 1, financial freedom, number 2, time freedom, number 3, geographical freedom, 4 and 5 are near and dear to my heart as well. So number 4 is what we call freedom to impact. Freedom to impact, which basically means that once you've got the money, the time, and you can go anywhere in the world, you can start giving back to humanity. Maybe you want to do some charity work. Maybe you want to do a mission trip. Maybe you want to create a foundation. But I'm telling you, the secret to living is giving. So once you've got some money, some time, and you're able to go anywhere you want on the planet, that's going to allow you and your spouse or your family or your organization to really show up and go big to give big. That's number 4. What do you think of 4, Mike?
Yeah, and that's what makes some of it worthwhile, of all the time and energy spent being a doctor, when you can start to have some positive impacts that feel like you're leaving some sort of legacy and impact on other people. It's a wonderful.
So good. So good. And that then takes us to the 5th and final one, which is pretty cool as well. And it's something that I call freedom of relationships. Freedom of relationships, not freedom from, but freedom of going out there and surrounding yourself with other high performers, other people that play life at a higher level. Guys like Dr. Mike McManus, who will get on a plane, he'll get on a train, he'll go skiing in Colorado, he'll go to meetups, he'll go to conferences because he knows that he's going to be surrounded by other high-performing, like-minded people. And I'm telling you, the more you get into real estate and the more you get into impacting and giving back, you start to attract better people to you, to your spouse, to your community, right? And it doesn't mean that we can't love our family, and it doesn't mean that we can't love thy neighbor and all of that. But you know what? I really do believe that we all have a unique ability to up-level, the people that we surround ourselves with, because I said before that your net worth is really created from your network. So to recap all of them, and then I'll throw it over to you for number 5, Mike, again, is the 5 freedoms consist of moving towards financial freedom, number 2, time freedom, number 3, geographical freedom, number 4, freedom to impact, and yes, number 5, freedom of relationships. What do you as a doctor think of those, and can you see other docs that would love to have that?
The freedom of relationships has been a really cool one over the past 6 months. And that's, as a doc, sometimes you get stuck in a small circle of doctors talking about doctor things. And my real estate circle now does have some docs in it, a pharmacist, a bunch of tech people, contractors, but it's a bigger circle of people. And it just adds a bigger view to the world, which has been really fun. I've really enjoyed that part.
Absolutely. You get perspective, you get brevity, you get humor, you get possibility. And really, you know what? We're not on this earth very long. So it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s or your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the next step. And so it doesn't matter if you're new to real estate, or maybe you are an intermediate, or maybe there's some experts listening here. I think as we do these conversations, it's really boils down to whether you're interested in this stuff or if you're committed. Because here's what I know as a high performance coach. There's two types of people that will be listening to this show right now. There's people that I call interested, and then there's people that I call committed. And here's the difference. For people that are interested, they'll do what's convenient to go, you know what, Mike and Trevor, that was a really good episode, but I'm pretty busy and I got a lot on my plate, right? Whereas the ones that are committed, they'll do whatever it takes to move some of this forward. So I want the listener to really check in with themselves right now and ask, am I someone who's interested, or am I someone who's committed, or as I like to say, defiantly committed to living my best life? What do you think of that?
I think that's awesome. That's such a, and when you stall out, and we all stall out and have our hitches, but where you step back and say, nope, I'm committed. This is what I'm doing. It's not just an interest, not just a thing I'm thinking about. So, well, this has been so great, Trevor. We'll put in the show notes all the contact information for Trevor if you want to get a hold of him. Thank you for being on the show. Much appreciated. And we'll talk to you again soon.
And thanks for having me out. It was great to be here with you.
This has been an episode of Surgeon Syndicate. If you got value from this episode, you know other surgeons are hungry to become job optional, and you can help them by sharing this content today. Schedule a call and we can make a plan. Looking forward to having you with me on the next episode.